Um,
Well, I'm sure you will.
yeah, no, and I think we all will know of her. I think she's someone who we're seeing at the beginning of a thoughtful and intelligent engagement with the world that be worth following
Yeah.
or supporting or or joining or whatever.
Yeah.
I hope there are more Democrats who can adopt her modus operandi and, engage more people who are, blue collar, rural, and feel disaffected, because that's, without that vote, Democrats aren't going to get
Yeah.
very far.
Well, I think the lesson from her column, I think, is that the Democratic establishment will not promote that change. But if individual candidates read her, pick up on what she says, that it may happen that way. Sounds to me like the establishment is pretty slow to change.
Certainly, her track record in being an elected person in parts of Maine, which are far from democratic,
Mm-hmm.
in the party sense, is incredibly solid.
Yeah.
And she certainly has walked the talk and delivered, both in terms of what she said, but also what she's done in terms of proposing legislation that is passable and doable and good. And for somebody as young and quote unquote inexperienced, I guess you can't call her inexperienced anymore, can you?
No, you certainly can.
She has a lot going for her, and yeah, so we'll see what happens with her.
Well, I don't know if I've heard from John Whitlock and from Whit and from John Coles that they won't be with us, but I think Peter Calkins is supposed to be with us, and there must be at least a couple more that I can't think of right now. But
Ira Helfand, possibly.
Well, Iris said he had it on his calendar. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So and he usually is prompt. So I would assume he will. I mean, I meant to try to send out a reminder today, and I didn't get around to that. I was doing so many other things, but I think he said he put it on his calendar, so I trust that.
Are we waiting for more people? Is that?
Well, yeah. I mean, there are a couple more. I don't know if. I mean, I think we can afford. I had assumed. The record is that recently is that we tend to not want to go much more than an hour, but I think we have a lot to talk about. So I'm imagining that we can maybe stretch it to an hour and a half, but I don't anticipate going any longer than that. So I don't want to wait too long, but I think it would be good to maybe I should try to think about. See, we have 6 of us, so that's, and I know 3. So I guess Peter Calkins is the only one. He would make 7, and then the other 3 is that right?
I think Whit and John are not going to be.
Yeah, Whit and John are not, and also John Whitlock is not going to be able to make it. He sent a note this afternoon. Who am I missing? It is.
I think you got him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I still send things to Jim Hunter, but he doesn't go. So I guess it's Peter Calkins, John. Yeah, no, that's it. So it's Ira and Peter are the only 2 that the only 2 more that I expect. So.
Do we need more people in order to fulfill the agenda topics?
We don't have any rules about, oh, there's somebody more. We don't have any rules about Lyra Great. We saw Ira briefly. There he is. Good to see you. Well, I mean, maybe
Zero.
we should not wait for Peter, because we don't, I mean, I could send him a message, I suppose, but he from what I understand, he was really planning to be here tonight, so I think he will be.
Well, let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do it. So what I want to, if you remember from the agenda that I posted, I think the first thing I would like to do is to arrive at a consensus agreement of whatever we want to call it about the issue that I guess Joe Duane kind of introduced. I mean, Joe Simons introduced about, we sent a message around about the splintering of messaging. And I think we need to sort of come to some understanding about that. And I think John Cole sent something earlier today about, a proposed kind of framework or understanding that we might all agree to, that is, did everyone have a chance to see John's message that he sent today? I see Nat nodding, that
Yes.
David, everybody. So is there, I mean, do we want to discuss those points specifically, or?
Let's discuss the issue. Let's discuss the issue.
Okay, well, I think the issue is that I think the issue is I feel, and I think then, and certainly that was what Joe was expressing, is that we are most effective when we operate as a group, as a team, and we're much less effective, if not ineffective, if we start operating individually and not working as a team. And so I guess it's, that it's really, it's quite as simple as that, is that I think we just need to have a way to agree that we're to go, how we're going to work collaboratively for a common goal. And I don't know if is there anybody, does anybody else?
I think we should talk about, when did we start not following that? Because we started as a group. We started without a designated leader. We had open discussions with everyone. We agreed on our basic objectives and how we would go about it. In free and open discussion, we worked by consensus. And the communications we made were also made by consensus as a group. And then, when did that stop? When did the change start?
Well, I know when I think it started.
Go ahead.
That was when I learned indirectly that a message had gone from you with 4 other names of people who are associated with Cal as sort of signatures to the message, but it wasn't sent to me. It wasn't sent to more than half of the team. So I don't, I said, well, what's this about?
Well, here's where I think it started. I think in December, a letter was proposed to be sent to Bill Rawson. And in the same way we had worked before, the letter was sent around to all of us and we were going to discuss it. A draft was proposed and it was addressed, and you said it should be on Cal letterhead, coming from Cal. And it was signed John Coles. Wasn't signed by the group. It was signed, and it said, "I look forward to hearing from you." Okay? And now, I made one suggestion. I said, well, I thought, well, this is a little bit inappropriate, but I won't make an issue out of it. Can we at least say, we look forward to hearing from you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that letter, I think that change was made because we never saw the final draft. Something was sent out. I hope it said, "We look forward to hearing from you," but we never heard. None of us ever got any response. Some of us got some response, but the group did not get a response. Okay, I think that's when it started. After that, another letter went out from John Coles, again to Rawson. This one was not given to the rest of the group beforehand. It was just sent out by John Coles. At least it was shown to the rest of us after it went out. But this was not done by the group. Okay, now after that, a whole number of communications were made by John Coles and by John and Nat and by you, Conrad, that the rest of the group were not even advised were happening. We were all left in the dark while you guys went off and had a whole series of conversations with Bill Rawson, and we don't know who else. And then it came to a point where I was told Bill Rawson wants to talk to you, Joe. Wants to talk to me? I've never talked to Bill.
Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but I think, we may not have, followed the best procedures in the past. But rather than relitigate and get all worked up about mistakes that were made in the past, why don't we look at going forward? And
Because I
how
think
we
we need to understand exactly what we're talking about, Nat. I think we really need to understand. To say that it all started with me and four others, in April, when it has gone on, when for months before that, with other people, and it's you now saying that we have to make a change, and now the change that's proposed is that everything be approved by Conrad. I mean,
not approved. I don't
so
think what's being
No,
approved.
I don't think
So,
that, that's
that's
not my
exactly
understanding.
that's exactly what John proposed there. As long as it's okay with Conrad, it's okay. So all what I'm talking about now is everything that went on from December that destroyed our group consensus mode. And
Well, let me just ask,
we tried
I had no sense that our group consensus was destroyed back in,
because you were carrying on conversations
no,
without bringing.
that's not what I'm saying. I mean, I don't, that the letter that John sent to Bill with his signature was a response that Bill had sent to him. So, there was, Bill had chosen, has had a relationship with him that's unlike any the rest of us have had because of John's background with and his family connections and all. It's just a
And
different.
his granddaughter being a student currently at the academy, and Bill Rawson inviting John to see him when John was going to be on campus visiting his granddaughter.
That's
so
right.
Bill Rawson initiated some of these, communications to John Coles, which John responded to. Now, it may look from the point of view of Cal that John was doing an end run around the rest of us, but I do not think that is a fair characterization of what John Coles was doing.
I'm not characterizing it. I'm just saying there's been no sharing of that with the rest of the group. You can characterize that as an end run or whatever. I'm saying in terms of splintering,
Well,
these are individual conversations, not in an individual capacity, but in the name of the group. And as I said, Rawson said, suddenly he wanted to talk to me because of some conversation that he had had with you, Nat, and with John Coles,
and with me. Let me explain what happened.
Yeah.
I said, can I explain what?
Because we had no idea that conversation was going to happen.
I sent, there was a series of within a short period of time, John and Rawson were communicating, and John relayed to me that Rawson had said to him that he was really interested in learning more about the issues that we were dealing with. And I had I had shared Richard Heinberg's summary chapter, chapter 7 to his book with the students by that time and with other people. So I sent that to Bill Rawson on, I think probably a Wednesday, as I recall. He got right back to me the next day and said, I want to talk to you. And he said, can we talk tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? And we sort of, he had proposed that. And so I said, sure. So I was ready he was going to do a Zoom. So I was ready to talk to him at 9 o'clock. And at 5 minutes to 9, he sent a message that I didn't see to email because I was waiting, for something. He sent a message that I didn't see until, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock. I forget when it finally was when I saw it. He said, I want to talk to, I guess I want to be more efficient. I'll talk to you. And can John and Nat join? So then we had to kind of scramble and figure out when, so it wasn't until a Sunday, as I recall, the weekend of the school had already gone on spring vacation that there was a time when there was a conversation he had with 4 of us. Turned out, to my mind, what he wanted to do was to kind of practice what he was going to say in that upcoming sustainability update that originally McTammany and Biggins were doing. But he said, he was just talking to us, and he said, well, the talking points that he shared with us were pretty much the same of what we heard there. That we're, Exeter is not starting from scratch. We're aiming high. We're it was just sort of here. He just kind of said that those same things multiple times, and I didn't think it was particularly meaningful. So that's the conversation.
Okay, but so.
And I didn't try to set it up. He set it up.
Yeah, this is the first the group has heard of that. Beyond you and Nat and John. And so what I'm saying is this splintering, you want to, jump on me for what, was done, a couple of weeks ago. Months went by with this stuff going on and in March, Witt sent an email saying, we need to get together and talk about how we're operating as a group. And I followed up with an email saying yes. And Dave followed up with an email saying the same thing. And Joe Simons followed up with an email saying the same thing. And I sent another email. Joe Simon sent another email. David sent another email. Yes, Peter Calkins sent an email. And then Nat sent an email, and there was 0 response. Why are you all these emails are out there, and there was just no response that we are going to talk about these issues for the entire, month of April.
Are you talking about for me? Are you talking about for me? I mean, who are you? What's response were you?
You have been the coordinator of not the leader, but the coordinator of our group. And when we set up group Zooms like this, we do that through you.
Yeah.
So
well, let me say, I tried to explain briefly in the long message that announced this session that starting actually in March, I'd gotten word that I had, I've been under treatment at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston since 2015, and I had reached a point, sort of the treatment I was currently receiving had come to an end in December, and I was told that something else was going to start in the new year, and it wasn't clear. I got a sort of a sudden notice in the middle of March that I had to come in for some tests, and it started, so I didn't want to go into all the details, but I had to start treatment in the very first Tuesday of March, and it involved, I went in every Tuesday for a week, and then actually, for 5 weeks, because I started in it, and I was going in for these essentially a 12-hour period of time since when I would leave home and be there on IV treatment, and then. And I was just exhausted the entire time. So there were some times that I tried to start even communicating, and I didn't have the stamina, and I was wiped out. So I wish that hadn't happened, but I didn't really have much control over that. So
well, you may not have, but understand that the perspective of the others, that we are asking to get together as a group to talk about the very issue we're talking about now, and there is just 0 response, 0 even acknowledgement. There's not even an short acknowledgement from you saying, guys, I'm really, I'm getting treatment, I'm really under the weather or something. Can we put this off? No, we're just hearing nothing.
Well,
okay?
I apologize for that. I don't know what more I mean, there were a couple of
You
people.
don't
I
have to
mean,
apologize. I'm
Joe,
just
Joe,
telling you.
Joe, a few people knew I was in communication with a couple of people, and I thought that somebody else would point out. I mean, it just, I was not capable of doing it, and I'm sorry that I wasn't. But I wish we could. I'd like to move beyond that. I mean, this.
Fine, fine. I'm giving you now the background of why I and Whit and David and Joe Simons and Peter, finally decided if we're not gonna, if the Cal group is moribund now and just not responding, and will not work as a group, we don't want to sit inactive and just let time go
Yeah.
by.
Well, let me
We
just
want
say,
to
Joe,
do
let me
the
say
thing.
I mean, I try to cut to the, I subsequently talked to those people, one, individually with email or various things, and I got the impression that most of them were sort of surprised by the letter that you sent with their signatures on it. They didn't really know what that was coming. And so it seemed to me that they were anyway. I mean, I don't want to say anything, but it just, this is,
No, no, that's not true at all. That's not true at all.
well,
I can share
I'm
the
saying what
email
they
right.
told me. I'm saying what they told me. So there, that's
Okay,
all you didn't tell me anything, so I didn't know. I wouldn't have heard. I didn't hear anything from you.
what I did was like our group had operated in the past. I drafted a draft letter and I sent it and I said, what do you think? Would you, do you have any changes to this? Would you want to put your name on? Should we do this or not? And I sent that around and got buy-in from everybody before we sent it out.
Okay.
And that started, and so, I wrote, 4 months, I had been saying, one of the things we ought to do is try and get in touch with this Ira Helfand guy. And not just limit our school communications with Rawson and McTammany. And there was no follow-up on that. And I asked Nat, can we get in touch with this trustee, Ira Helfand? He's going to be head of the climate group. No response. So finally, I, dug around on my own and was able to find his email address. And then I talked to, the group of us who were still wanting to work as a group. And as a group, we put a letter together and sent a letter to him, inviting him to talk to the whole group. And then I was very surprised to, get a very nice response from him saying he had been contacted already by the Cal group, And so it's not only that you have been having undisclosed conversations with Ross, and no one told the rest of the group about your conversations with Ira. So you're telling me that I created splintering by reaching out to Ira, uh, and I'm trying to tell you, I think that's quite unfair, the splintering.
Joe, we understand you're unhappy. We understand that we have misacted. We apologize. Let's move on here. Instead of relitigating this, let's
Okay.
move on and let's talk about the future. We know you're unhappy. We apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did what I did that offended you, upset you. Let's move on, please.
Okay. Do we want to work as a group as we started at the beginning, as a council, with open discussion in a completely, democratic way? Or do we want to start saying, one individual will be in charge of everything and will regulate everything we're going to do?
I don't think anyone is proposing that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way I read John's
Well,
email.
I don't think you read it accurately. That's not the way I read it.
Mhm.
What do other people think?
Yeah. Let's hear. I think this is the time for more people to speak up.
Let me jump in. I would agree that I don't think that John's letter is proposing that one person, that we have some kind of dictatorship, the way you're making it sound, Joe. But I also don't think that we, there's we all got to get on the same page mantra also is something that I don't necessarily agree with either. And I think that's a bad title to start things with. I do think, Nat, I totally agree with let's move forward and not, revisit the history of this. Also, I'm not sure that that's helpful. We do, I think we do need to be clear that we are 10, 12, whatever number of individuals we are, all that are involved with other things. We're all also very much concerned about the issue at hand. And when we speak in the name of Cal, we ought to have a process that is consensual and fully informed, etc. There may be other communications that take place on an individual basis that are not in the name of Cal, that will inevitably take place because we're all engaged people and we're doing a whole bunch of things. That's good. And they may not be totally coordinated and they may not be on the same line. But if we're going to use the name of this group of people under the three-letter acronym of CAL, then we need a consensual process to have that happen. And I do think that that consensual process also needs a honcho. It needs a focal point, call it coordinator, call it whatever you want. But I think, and I think that, Comrade, kudos to you. I wish you had told us more so we could perhaps have been more supportive of you during that period of time when you were really struggling.
I'm sorry.
Would have been good. No, don't be sorry. Come on. It would have been nice to know so we could perhaps, I could drive down to Massachusetts with a bag of fruit. I don't know, whatever. But
that would have made a difference.
But no, seriously. But I do think that if we're going to have communications that are in the name of this group, as a group, there ought to be a consensual process that gets us to that. But it does need somebody to be the honcho. And I prefer honcho to coordinator or whatever else.
Or the spokesperson, perhaps the spokesperson might be.
No, I think coordinator.
You need a cattle prod in there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree with basically everything David's saying, but I would just say that it is not formally invoking the Cal name. I mean, when John continues his one-on-one conversations with Rawson understands that he's speaking on behalf of the whole group.
I don't think so necessarily.
Yeah, well, Rawson told me that. Okay, so that's why I have that view. So let's if we are talking, in like the letters that I sent to Ira and or the letters that the five of us sent to Ira and the letters are sent to McTammany, to have continue a discussion with him as he requested. We made it clear that this was coming from us and didn't use the name Cal.
No, you didn't. Yeah.
So, but we were operating as a group in a group consensus matter. And in discussing this with this group of guys, consistently said, I really wish the whole Cal group were doing this, but we're not getting any response from Cal. And if any of you guys know how we can get back the whole group back together, let us know. So I've wanted to do that all along, but it was the lack of any response to the email after email after email that and going a whole month, silently, that, led us to say, well, we got to keep moving. We can't just stop. Something's got to happen. And so, there we are. So I think going forward, I think, we should go back to where we started with Conrad as a coordinator, but not as a spokesperson and not as a leader and here's another thing that happened, which is in your email as well. I think it's related, is the statement of purpose. Conrad took it upon himself to send out an email saying, statement of purpose, our original statement of purpose no longer applies. Here's the new one. use this. And he did not, look at your email, Conrad. Now you're saying you asked for people to discuss it. You didn't. You said,
I
I
thought
have
there would be
changed.
some discussion.
Well, you didn't ask for discussion. You said, use this. This is our new email. Going forward, use this. That's injunctive language. That's not, okay? So I was taken aback by that. And I said, isn't this something we should discuss? And that's one of the reasons I sent an email saying, can we discuss how we're going to operate as a group? You know, and
Well,
to that, there's no response.
okay, I feel that I'm being scolded here with your tone of voice and everything. It's just like it's so. This feels like,
Apart from tone of voice.
well,
You're not the only one, Conrad.
yeah. So I don't know if we can. I mean, I was hoping that this part of our meeting could be over in 10 or 15 minutes. Obviously, it's it's well over. We're not anywhere near being able to stay to agenda, which is too bad. So.
Okay, I'm sorry for my tone of voice, but I think we have to frankly talk about these things. And I have friendship and respect and admiration and affection for you, Conrad. You know that very, very well. And you, Nat, you know that very, very well. But I think, we have to talk very frankly, because this is not about me or you. This is about the Exeter student body, and actually it's about their generation, and actually it's about the entire planet. It's not
Yeah.
about us.
Yeah.
Okay, and so it's important. It's important that we keep moving and we do something. And so what I'm get a lot of resistance to is my emphasis on action and moving and not just being reactive and passive. And I think there's so many things that this group, could and should be doing, and so little that it is actually doing. And so, yeah, that's a frustration for me. And I want to talk to, keep talking to the group about actually doing things.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of that in the agenda that we haven't gotten there yet. So,
So let's get to that. Let's get to that.
Yeah. I mean, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the issue of
So in the future, well, okay, just to close this off, in the future, we're going to go back to the way we were, at the beginning.
well, no, we didn't seem to resolve anything. I don't know. I haven't heard from a lot of people, so I'm not sure where we stand. I mean,
Do you want to just drop it unresolved, or should we resolve it?
well,
Well, let me,
If
can
I
I,
could jump,
here,
yeah.
and just, I would like to ask Ira Helvan a question, as someone who is not really, hasn't really, been a part of our group from the beginning, but in your position as a trustee, Ira, what do you think would be most helpful from a group like ours, in terms of speaking, hopefully with one voice, or at least a consensus voice, to the trustees? I mean, how can we, how do you think we can be most helpful in moving, the Exeter's work on climate disruption, mitigating climate disruption forward?
I mean, I think there are two ways that you can help to buck up the trustees a bit on this issue. And I say that somewhat advisedly because I'm not necessarily sure that they need bucking up, but I think that would be the function that this group might be able to provide if the trustees aren't addressing this adequately. One is by persuasion, by the arguments that you all are very familiar with on this issue, because you know a lot more about it than many of the trustees do, myself included. And the other is just by virtue of demonstrating a constituency. I think it's useful for the trustees to know that there are alumni, and especially for them to know that there are alumni who are not just the youngest alumni, who are very concerned about this issue and think that the Academy needs to step up its game. I think we need to be careful, kind of myself as part of this group, for this, how we present what we have to say, because the decisions aren't ours to take. I mean,
Right.
we can offer an opinion, we can offer our hopes that they will act in a certain way, but ultimately the decisions, especially the ones that involve curriculum, are not ours to make. They're not even the trustees to make, they're the faculty's to make. So I think as long as we approach things in that kind of a tone, making it clear that there are a group of trustees who are supportive of a fundamental transformation of the Academy's approach to the climate question, who want to be supportive of students who are trying to do this, who have a lot of expertise, contacts, and so on, that they are eager to share with the community in terms of resources, potential speakers, and so on. I mean, all that's to the good, and it obviously would be good if it was all relatively coordinated and spoken with one voice.
Mhm.
I'd say, having been involved in all kinds of activist stuff for decades, this is the way we all function. We don't do a very good job usually of getting our act together.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I don't find anything exceptional about the difficulties that the group has had over the last bit of time. And really do think understanding the hurt feelings that several people feel, perhaps quite understandably, about having not been included. The real key here is to get together and start moving forward.
Well, I think that's very helpful. And going back to your first point of how we could be most helpful, especially with the trustees you were talking about, are being able to make persuasive arguments about this. Do you think, for instance, that the trustees would benefit from seeing the statement of purpose, some version of the statement of purpose that we have drafted up? Do you think that would be useful?
Yeah, I do. I think that would be a very useful thing.
Okay.
You guys, we all got to make sure we have a statement of purpose that we're all agreeing to, but yes.
Exactly, exactly. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I may jump in here, I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, I think that I'm sorry for being late, but it seems as if we were talking about the past. And I think we really have to focus on how we move forward. That's the first thing. I know we've all read Jonathan Coles's excellent suggestions, 4 suggestions over two emails. And his paragraph 1 says very clearly, I think, that we need a leader. I think, Joe, you were ill at ease with the word leader, but Conrad, you have been the leader from the beginning. I think you should be the leader as we move forward. And the students themselves have shown us incredible leadership and incredible diversity in the approaches that they are suggesting. So I think our statement of purpose has to change as we move forward. It has to become more inclusive. And so it's perfectly normal that we would call a sort of brainstorming session as one of our meetings to really tear it apart, keep the idea of the integrated course, which I guess Andrew McTominay has basically said is not in the option for next fall. I have no idea why he said that, but modify the statement of purpose so it is current for what we're doing now, for what the students are doing now, for what Ira and the other trustees are doing now. We have to be flexible. And I think the last thing I'd like to say is that, yes, like Joe, I am frustrated that we haven't really been able to act so far. I couldn't say this when the students were on the call last time, but I'd like to say it to you. Why don't we offer ourselves as morning chapel speakers? We could offer a whole series, which they can accept and reject. Mm-hmm. But I think Joe's idea of an integrated vision, a conceptual framework, is spot on. But there are more ways to communicate that than with a single required course. Joe, you could come and you could give them a sort of integrated vision of the various multiple disciplines that tie in. Then somebody like me, an economist, could come and talk about donut economics, and somebody with expertise in engineering could talk about the physical side, as a whole series of alumni given talks. And I think that would show many things. It would show everyone that we are serious, that we have ideas, that we care, and we want movement now and not putting it off for another year. So I don't know if we can agree on what I've just said, but that's how I see it at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, well, I certainly don't expect to be flying from Bangkok to Exeter to talk to the student body, nor do I think I would be qualified to. Not false humility here. I know I'm no expert in any of this, and I'm no expert in climate, all the issues with climate crisis, nor in education at all. Now, what I have pushed for was for this group to reach out to people in the area who would, have those bodies of, I won't say expertise, but and talk to them and be available and suggest them to the students, for the students, to invite to come and talk on these various issues. And back in December, I said, we've got this target of April 25, this Climate Action Day, the one day a year at Exeter on climate action. We can use that, as a goal, and find speakers and have the students, have a lead up in this important time frame. Climate Action Day is on a Monday. They can have speakers come in on Saturday and Sunday, or Friday is actually Earth Day. We can reach out and but there was no reaction from the rest of the group. Nobody made any effort to, I started putting a list together, and the funny thing was Dan Schrag was on the top of my list. I thought he would be a great guy to come out. And it turns out, Andrew McTamaney actually invited him. Now, he's a guy who teaches, he's the head of the Environmental Center at Harvard, and he teaches at Kennedy. He teaches a course that's exactly, a graduate school model of the suggestion that we've been making to the school. And I've sent, the description of his course around. He's the guy who can tell you that you need to introduce students at whatever level to the entire spectrum of issues involved in the climate emergency. And he's doing that. And it's not only him. If you go back, I don't know if any of the rest of us have gone back to look at these prior reports on the climate action plan from the past 2 years. But if you look at the first one, which was 2 years ago, Andrew McTamaney is saying, yeah, we've got these small modules, here and there. We've got, some selective electives. But the real question is, how do we reach the whole student body on the whole picture, which is the science, the economics, the political issues, the sociological issues? How do we do that? That's what we need. He's saying that 2 years ago. So it's not that we're pushing something new or something that's rocket science. I mean, it's not. This is not some brand new idea that I cooked up. This is getting real about climate. And if you're going to teach Spanish at Exeter, are you going to say, no, we don't need an introductory Spanish course. We're going to have 1 to 2 week Spanish modules in math classes and in bio classes and, and in a history class. No, seriously, just think about this. Why Exeter is resisting the idea of actually having a course on the climate emergency,
Well, Joe, it seems for the moment that what's on the table, though, is that there is going to be a year-long focus on climate this coming year. And that's sort of our point of entry at this point. There are going to be multiple slots, as I understand it, devoted to bringing speakers to campus to talk about this issue. It may not be the coordinated introductory course that you've been talking about, but it's going to be much more than just isolated modules. And the hope is that this is not going to be a one-off, one-year focus on climate, but the beginning of something much more substantial. So, I think that concretely, if we want to do something right now that's concrete, it would be to try to get to the students who I think will have a lot of input into who the speakers are. Our best suggestions are who we think we would offer to them as people to invite to campus.
Okay, so can I tell you how that happened? That happened when, after we, as a group, we met with McTamaney and we went with Rawson, and we got nowhere with them. And then we said, we want to meet with the students. We met with the students. We asked them, what are you guys doing? And they gave us a written list of what they're doing. And in our conversations, we suggested to them that they put a year-long program together with outside speakers.
Well, that's great, and it's
Yeah,
happening. So
and
let's move forward with
they
it.
picked up on it. They picked
Yeah.
up on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what and they presented it. And now that's happening. That's happening because we put that idea in their head and they took it. So what I'm saying is we need to keep the ball rolling. We need to go out and find these speakers and help them and help support them in any way we can to make this a successful program. I'm saying exactly the same thing you're saying. I'm just telling you where it came from.
Well, I just want to point out one other thing, and that is that, you know, the student proposal to Principal Rawson was, my understanding was essentially accepted as they wrote it, with one exception, and that is that rather than calling it a year-long focus, he said that we want to make this one of the pyramids of Exeter's going forward.
Pillar.
Like it just, you know,
It's
make
a
it
pillar,
permanent.
Conrad.
A pillar, sorry, a pillar, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's even better, you know, so I think that's
Yeah.
was a very worthy addition on his part.
I have a question actually about that term. I was struck by that because he said a pillar, like
Right.
in a Greek
A
temple,
pillar, right.
is there to stay. It's there to hold up the rest of the intellectual structure and so on. Have there been other pillars in the past? And is it possible to have a single pillar in any kind of structure? In other words, it seems to me that this automatically calls for something else, you know, gender equity or something like that. Do we know, have there been past pillars?
I'm not sure they've used the word pillar, but I certainly think that the gender equity and inclusion is something that they've been doing now for a number of years. And I mean, I think they are developing new pillars.
Right, need blind
I think
admissions, for example. Yeah.
the clearest predecessor of this was the commitment, you know, to make Exeter an anti-racist school and to imbue the entire curriculum, the entire life of the school with a commitment to fighting racism. And you know, the conversations I've been having within the trustees, that's the kind of model I've been suggesting, that we need to, in the same way, make Exeter a pro-survival school that is committed to stopping the climate crisis. And I've also added, given my perspective, to preventing nuclear war, which is, I think, the other great existential threat. And I think I don't think the term pillar has been used before, but I think that the reference was to this effort to make the school an anti-racist institution.
And Ira, what kind of thoughts what kind of feedback do you get from the trustees when you bring this up? I mean, I assume that they, in theory, you know, agree, but do they engage further about how to actually implement this? I mean, what are their reactions to what you say? I mean, if you can, whatever's not confidential.
Yeah, no, I think in general, in a very generic sort of way, that idea is accepted. In terms of really buying into it and sort of making this the forefront of thinking, I don't think that's happened yet. I think that's where I think this group can be useful in sort of continuing to both provide persuasive arguments and also to demonstrate an ongoing constituency. You know, the trustees, you know, they're volunteers that got their day jobs, and the school has been grappling with a whole bunch of other huge issues that have been very immediate, like the COVID crisis in particular, the pandemic.
Well, let me ask you a question. This just came into my head. I'm assuming it's going to be some kind of version of Exeter Leadership Weekend in September, as there usually is. Do you think having climate disruption on the program would be a good idea in some form?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
And I don't know.
Well, maybe we could suggest that to Bill Rawson, you know, the next time we communicate with him, and, you know, see if we could start thinking about that. I mean, it's already May. September is not far off. And so if this were, I don't mean that, you know, a full scale, you know, series of, you know, workshops or anything like that, but maybe, you know, a discussion for 10 or 15 minutes. This is something the Academy wants to work on. We're interested in you know, having alumni become involved in this. You know, there will be a lot of alumni there, even if it's by Zoom. You know, this could be an opportunity to get some more, you know, publicity for this issue.
I think that would be a great thing to suggest to Bill. He has talked for about a year now of the possibility of at some point creating a climate summit, you know, sort of a major focal event, bringing together alumni, major donors who might be interested in helping to support this kind of initiative, students, faculty, everybody into this sort of major event around climate. And I think, you know, that that hasn't been put into a concrete plan yet, but I think that idea is very alive, and suggesting that this be a focus, at least for the leadership weekend, would be a very useful suggestion.
Okay.
This is,
You know, if he's talking about that, I would love to know how we can support that,
yeah.
a summit.
Yeah, I agree with that. That I think it needs to, if that can move forward in a way that the people who are interested in and would be the right people to include in that, if that, you know, the planning for something like that has to get started soon. So,
Yeah.
Well, far be it from me to seize power in this group. But if all of you agree, I would be happy to draft an email, not necessarily from me, but from us as a group, to Bill Rawson, making this suggestion for Exeter Leadership Weekend, you know, in September, this coming September, and then everybody can, you know, dive in and pull it apart and so forth. But
Can
if
we
we
see
could
a show
send
of
that to
hands?
if we could send that to Bill Rawson sometime during the month of May, you know, then I think it stands some chance of actually getting into the programming for Exeter Leadership Weekend in September, which for those of you who, you know, may not know, and there's no reason why you would, but it's in the past, before COVID, it was, you know, a large group of alumni. I mean, the real volunteers who are most committed to being volunteers, maybe 400 or so, or maybe more, I don't know exactly, who come to Exeter every, you know, September. And it's a, you know, opportunity for everybody to get enthusiastic and learn about the school and have dinner with the senior class, you know, which happens on the Friday evening and so forth. But, you know, in order to put this on the agenda formally, you know, could really generate some interest, I think.
Yeah.
And when I'm up in school in a couple of weeks, let me try to find out what the status of his thinking is about the summit as well.
Okay.
Okay. Because he actually brought that up. You know, Bill Rawson brought up the idea of the summits.
Yeah. This is a point I want to say. I want to sort of jump ahead. I want to talk before we completely go. I'd like to talk about the possibilities for growth for this group. But the majority of the verbiage that I sent you for this and the materials to talk about are really about another important point that I wanted to get this into the conversation now, and that is that I feel very strongly that the climate disruption issue is an extremely important issue and most people who think about environmental challenges think about the climate, but my experience in sort of paying attention to this sort of larger thing is that climate is really a symptom, and only a symptom of a more basic issue, and that is humans' attitude about how to relate to the world and how to relate to each other. And we unfortunately have been operating on the notion that everything, that most of our decisions are determined by what we think is best for humans. It's a human-centric point of view. And what I think is important to understand is that there are some other important, this other element should be added to the conversation, because I think as long as we keep thinking about ways that just satisfy human needs, we're not going to get the kind of world we want. And as an example of that, I would like to share one brief thing. Let me just find it here, and then I'll to be able to share this with you. So one of the things that I sent to you was the conversation. There's been a series of talks that the Post Carbon Institute has sponsored called "What Could Possibly Go Right." Have any of you been aware of that at all? That know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So Vicki Robin, who lives on Whidbey Island, which is another island off the coast of Washington State, has been conducting these for well over a year. I think it's maybe it's not 2 years yet, but it's been quite a while. She's talking to a lot of people you've heard of and a lot of people you haven't heard of about this sort of question, what could possibly go right? Looking for sort of some, and so the 75th session was just about that she had was with Nate Hagens, who was one of the founders of the Oil Drum, which is an important blog that I've went in the early days of the focus on energy and the notion of peak oil and all those things. He teaches in Minnesota, and he's been teaching a course to hundreds of students for years now that he calls Reality 101. And I give you, he mentions that in his talk, in his conversation with Vicki Robin. And he because he said his, Earth Day is coming up, and he does it every year on Earth Day. I couldn't find that the video, if there was a video made of his talk this year, I haven't found it yet, but I'm familiar with the one that he gave in 2019, so just 3 years ago now. And I gave you the link to that. I highly recommend that you all watch that. But what I want to share with you is something that he said in the conversation with Vicki Robin, just published last week, and I think it's very indicative of the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So the question is, what could possibly go right? And so she sort of asked him right at the beginning, and one of the first things he said is this: what could go right or what could go wrong isn't an absolute. It's relative to what one expects. So if I said that 500 years from now, there would be 500 million humans alive, we would still have fully, deeply oxygenated oceans, and that people would be ecologically literate, and climate had been limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius and then retreated, I would say that would be incredibly right, kind of irrespective of what happens in this century. So that, I think, is an example of the kind of thinking it's not really about, he mentions climate, but what he's talking about is our expectations. And most people think that somehow we're trying to preserve the world we have. And that may not be an appropriate goal. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, I think that's all true, Conrad, and he's not the only. Nate Hagens is awesome. No other word.
He's awesome.
But he's not the only one.
No.
I mean, everyone everyone who really is involved in understanding the climate emergency understands that an anthropocentric view is at the heart, of this. So it's not new. And when we talk about a presentation, an introduction to the climate emergency, we've talked from the beginning about the need to look at, if you call them spiritual, you call them moral, you call them ethical, you call them religious, philosophical, psychological issues. Yes, that is part of the discussion. And so we've said that from the beginning. But you have to start with the science. To do something, yes, that may be the cause of the illness, but the symptoms that we're talking about now are putting the patient in the ICU. You got to deal with these symptoms right now, and that means taking action. And simply talking about your attitude towards the cosmos is not the medicine that's going to take you out of the ICU.
So we can disagree with that. I mean, I don't think it's to be ignored. I think it's pretty fundamental.
Of course,
if
I'm saying it's not to be ignored. Of course, it's not to be ignored.
Joe and Conrad, I'd like to jump in here and say that anthropocentric is really blurring the major injustice that our current goals are doing to the poor and the uneducated and women and the third world and everyone else. And that the climate solution cannot ignore a redistribution of access to those people. Just to cite, I mean, there are 3 or 4 crises going on. Just to cite the COVID thing, we sent millions of doses of COVID vaccine to Africa, to countries that don't have refrigeration. You know, we need a global solution to this, so that I would say that one of the moral principles that Joe, you mentioned, that we could use as a focal point is justice. The John Rawls theory of justice says that imagine that you were born in any country as a man or a woman, any educational level. What kind of world would you want to
Thanks,
be born
Ira.
into? Yeah.
Thanks,
Oh,
everyone.
Ira,
Sorry
yeah.
to,
Yeah.
no, sorry, I just have to go off.
Go ahead.
One quick
Go
thing.
ahead. Absolutely. Yeah,
Peter,
thank you very much.
I think that the justice lens is very important. I frankly, personally speaking as a doctor, think that the survival lens is even more important. And I tend to agree with what Joe is saying on this. We have sort of a patient who is in critical condition, and we got to figure out how to get him through the crisis or her through the crisis. And then we have to deal with all the underlying medical problems that go along with it. So anyway, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you all
Thanks so
soon.
much. Yeah.
Night.
So
Yeah,
that's,
but we're talking now about the content really of the message. I mean, we should be talking about how we get the message to the Exeter, to the Academy.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if the five of us, and I wish it had been the nine of us, and we can bring the nine of us in, have been, you know, following up on McTammany's request. If you guys haven't looked at the reports they made, you know, in the past 2 years, you will find that they said from the beginning, when somebody asked, what can we do as alumni? They said, you can give us your feedback. You can get other alums involved. You can get, we want to hear from other alums. We want to hear from you. Give us your feedback. Tell us where you think we're not doing right. Sometimes we need to be pushed. We want to hear from you. You know, tell us. This is their request. And at the end of the CAP, again, they said, please give us your feedback. And, you know, what we should have done as a group was prepare ourselves for that March 16. So we would have, you know, kind of some group way of having a group message or question or whatever that we could have gotten through. We didn't talk, and you know, I suggested that, and there was no response whatsoever. After that, we could have gotten together to talk about that presentation, but we didn't do that. We didn't. So So our one of the, you know, we've started a written conversation, which is not aggressive, you know, which is, but is not just passive, a rollover with McTammany about the program, about whether, you know, the small module, selective elective, which, you know, model that he said 2 years ago, he said was inadequate.
Yeah, we've heard of. Joe, could you? I would request you've referred now many times to things that they've said every year. I'm aware of a presentation that they made in 2020 that was actually for the Exeter Leadership Weekend. I'm not aware of anything in 2021. Could you send links to what you've seen in the different years and saying that they've, because I don't know where you're getting that. I've never seen that. So I just, you know, if when you have a chance, no rush, I would like to see that. Joe Simons, do you have something to say?
Yeah, and I'm not, don't have a prepared speech here. What I'm observing, and I don't want this to be misunderstood, is it feels like this whole conversation is the mice trying to deal with the cat. And there's, oh, should we try this? Should we try that? Whatever. And the cat in this case is, I guess, for the simplest version, the one that's focused on what we're talking about now is the Phillips Exeter Academy community, you know, faculty, staff, students, trustees, and I guess staff would include Rawson. I don't know how many of you guys know about this concept called the Overton window, but if you don't know about it, you can quickly find it on Wikipedia. It basically speaks about a range that is acceptable to the majority. And if, you know, and if you start moving outside that range, you're going to lose people because it's either too novel, too imaginative, too liberal, or too, you know, or it's too conservative. You know, it's like, you know, you've got a problem, and how do you move the whole system in the right direction? And I don't think we've spent any time at all, at least I haven't, in trying to get a picture of the size of the institutional problem we've got. You know, I wish Ira were here, but maybe just as well that he's not, because I have no idea, except from my own observations, about how flexible this institution is. My sense is it's not flexible at all, or has very modest. The Overton window is pretty narrow, and our effort has been trying to stretch it, and it's uncomfortable for them. From my point of view, if this really is, as we've all, I think, signed on, at least conceptually, an existential crisis. I mean, something unprecedented in the history of the planet, and it's in your face, it's getting worse, and it's the trajectories look awful, that would alone be enough to animate people. And of course, what I'm looking at here is something that is an extension of something that started 9 years ago, just by me. I mean, there's nothing to do with me, but what I'm trying to say is, if I hadn't done something, I don't even know if there would be anything more than what's already happening anyway. And this is, my point is that the institution is not grabbing a hold of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is resistant. And from my point of view, an organization like this, with the reputation and money and other resources that it has, is really squandering an incredible opportunity for you know, some incredible leadership, but it's not being used. What I'm sensing is backpedaling, and where I'm coming from is that if this were a corporation, and I've never worked for a major corporation, never been on the board of directors, so I'm, like somebody said here, least qualified to be probably even on this group. But typically the board of directors of a corporation, they're the guys who own the whole scene, or it could be women, hopefully, but my point is they're the ones who hire and fire the CEO, and the CEO presumably hires and fires the whole system to fulfill whatever it is that the board of directors said needs to be done. And in my view, the trustees have completely failed in elevating this topic to the level that it should be, and then to say, we are in charge. We're going to instruct Rawson to make this happen, and if it doesn't happen within 6 months or a year, he's gone. And if Rawson, if the charge needs to be that, hey, faculty, you guys need to step up to this plate. And if you got 6 months to think about it, and if you don't step up, that's fine, you're gone. We are going to, we want a completely new concept that is consistent with the problem. And nobody's doing that. So here's this opportunity for Exeter to do it. And they're not obviously embracing this vision. And I don't think they will. So what we're talking about here is, how can we get, you know, this course, or, you know, maybe each one of us gives a presentation, or we get some people, or whatever. This is all kind of Band-Aid shit on cancer. And maybe that's it, that we can't do more than that. But I'm thinking, for example, if we were to reach out to other alumni, what do we want them to do? What's our ask? Well, the only ask that I can think of is pressure the trustees to do the right thing. You don't have to tell them what it is. It's not like a class or a whatever. Just wake up to the reality of this unique, unprecedented global situation that is, without radical change, is going to essentially eliminate the institution and everything else. I mean, there's one of those films that we saw during the Earth Day, you know, and I think I've said this, I forgot about this, that there's enough heat baked into the ocean and the atmosphere right now to melt enough ice to raise a global level of the ocean 100 feet.
Or more.
It's
Or more
baked in. There's nothing but maybe geoengineering, which itself would be a fucking nightmare, that could potentially slow that down. I'm not going to stop it, but it could potentially slow it down. So why we're having trouble getting through is a mystery to me. But I think it's because one of the failures that Exeter has, and they are not the only ones, there are very few schools. I'm not sure I could even name one of them at the boarding school level, is a failure of imagination. It's a failure of teaching and encouraging, you know, out of the box thinking. Sadly, I think for me, that's the way I live. And so there's this weirdness of, I don't get why other people don't get this.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they don't is they can't. They don't have the imaginative skills. Now, I'm not saying I'm, you know, Einstein and everybody else is a zombie, but I'm just saying it's hard for me to understand. And I'm feeling like for all of us, we are more on the imaginative level. At least we understand the depth of this problem, but I don't think we have figured out a way to leverage this energy into something that actually gets the institution to, you know, do something more than put in geothermal heating systems.
So I think that the best, you know, entry we have here into the trustees is with Ira Helfand, who, you know, seems to be interested enough to attend some of our meetings, and certainly seems to get the, you know, the immediacy, the seriousness of this, and also has great credentials because of his work, you know, against, nuclear war. So I think, you know, the best we can hope, we are not in the position of being able to fire the trustees at Exeter. We're not in the position of being able to fire Bill Rawson. I mean, we can, you know, take advantage of our, position as alumni, you know, to make our voices heard and to advocate. But, you know, we don't have any control. We don't have any direct power. So, you know, if we're going to feel frustrated, which I think a lot of us are, I think we have to eat some of that frustration at the same time that we kind of move forward as best we can to advocate as strongly as we can. I mean, that's
I'm with you. In fact, I think your suggestion about this alumni thing that happens in September, this
leadership,
whatever
leadership.
I think it's a great suggestion, because right now, if there's no point in reaching, there's two things if we were to reach out to the broader alumni community. One is what's our ask, and two, how are we going to manage that unless we do have a core group that says, hey, we can't have
just let me make a
400
prediction.
people on a Zoom call.
Just let me make a prediction about this. Okay, Exeter Leadership Weekend has, as I said, maybe 400 really committed, really enthusiastic alumni who come. If this idea goes forward, and there is some discussion about climate disruption and what can Exeter do about climate disruption, I would suspect that there might be as many as 5, possibly 10 alumni out of 400 who would self-identify afterwards and say, you know, I'd be willing to spend some time on this. All right, I'd like to be more involved with this. It's not going to be a groundswell of people, even amongst the 400 people that are most, sort of enthusiastic about working for Exeter. I mean, I think that's reality that we face. I mean, this work is hard work. Of course, we all know it's serious, but, trying to attract a critical mass of other people, we have to put up with a lot of frustration and impatience because people have other things that they're spending their time on.
And from my point of view, even if Exeter went all in, I mean, all in, they changed the whole concept from the trustee down and say, hey, faculty, we're going for interdisciplinary. We're the primary focus, which one of you, maybe it was, yeah, it was Ira who said, which struck me when he talked about the racism issue. He then said about this issue, he said, a pro-survival institution. And now I've never heard that word before.
I never have either.
And I'm thinking, pro-survival, what does he really mean by that? And I like this guy. So I don't know him from Adam, right? But that's the kind of message that really has to say, that's a very different message than we are the #1 liberal arts boarding school in the world, just say we're pro-survival.
But you've also heard, you heard Ira Helfand tonight, say when he has presented these ideas to fellow trustees that yes, they agree in theory, but they haven't got yet to the implementation in their own minds about how to do this. So even with someone like Ira Helfand, who is very, in my opinion, very persuasive, very intelligent, very well thought, even he has got to, struggle with his frustration of dealing with the other trustees.
Absolutely. And my feeling is that if Exeter did go all in, really, and in 5 years had made this place truly a pro-survivalist institution and exported the template to every prep school in the country, and that got elevated to all the major universities from Harvard to Stanford and everywhere else in between, that still is not probably going to do enough to really deal with this problem.
So getting back to
we should have the really big picture that we are bailing the Titanic.
Okay, but what are the concrete steps that we can do coming back down to earth and looking at a sort of a smaller?
I'd like to talk about concrete steps. I think,
Yeah, I would too, but Joe, you go first.
I think one concrete step is that we ask Ira. Ira's got a subcommittee of other trustees.
Well, he doesn't yet.
How soon will he?
We hope, I think he anticipates being appointed, whatever they're going to call it, working group, whatever it is, in this month. I mean, they meet again in a week or two, and then I guess, yeah.
So as soon as he has a subgroup, and as soon as they are ready, and hopefully he would agree that we can, have a Zoom and have and talk to them directly. That requires us, of course, to get our act together as a group. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, and the other thing that I think, as an action is, we need a better picture of the situation at Exeter, the move. We have talked to Bill Rawson and Andrew McTammany, two people, and they've shown no interest. And so there we stopped. After that, we spoke to the students. Now, from the beginning, we've said there are other faculty at Exeter. I've heard this guy's Jason Burmiller, his name mentioned from October, there's a Betsy Stevens is another name. We hear there's this Goddard, who seems.
Sidney Goddard.
Yeah, if what Nicole said is accurate, he seems to have.
Sidney is a woman. Right.
Oh, okay. Good to know
Yeah.
that. Well, she seems to have her acting, her head.
All those people you've named are on what's called the Sustainability Committee, because they're former coordinators. With the exception, Sydney was not a coordinator. She's a science teacher.
Okay. So my suggestion is, as action, that we do what we've been saying since October, and we reach out. We take efforts to reach and have some communication with those individuals at Exeter. So we've gone beyond just Rawson and McTammany, and we get a better idea, and we can exchange ideas from them. And then the third thing is this issue of bringing other alumni and alumni into this group. And so we've talked about that and talked about that, and still only effort has been my effort to bring Rick Almendinger in, and he's been excluded going forward. So Nat says, what are we going to do with this huge problem we're going to have with the 300 people in, well, it's May, and we don't have that problem. We've saved ourselves from that problem, but we don't have anyone else, bringing new ideas, new perspectives, new viewpoints, into the new context. Yes, Peter.
Thank you very much, Joe. I would like to suggest an answer to the question, what's our ask with respect to the other alumni? And there are two divisions in the alumni. First, as Nat was pointing out, there are the 4 or 5 people that we can actually bring actively into this committee. But we don't want 30 or 40 or 50 people in a Zoom. It'll just be chaos. This was a point in Jonathan Coles' letter. So our first ask is for those 4 or 5 really committed, really knowledgeable alumni across many generations. The second ask is their financial contributions as a huge lever for change in the trustees, in the administration, in everything that we're talking about. There are 2 ways to use finances. One is basically blackmail. We will not send our annual contribution to Exeter unless you create a huge environmental program. This would not work. People will not do it. The other way is to create a special, it could even be an informal write-in fund that we could reach out to all the class representatives and say, we would like, because this year is the environmental pillar year, we would like to ask that much of normal donations be earmarked for the creation of a sustainable major environmental climate leadership program at Exeter. That, I think, is an ask that we have the right to make, and it would be very visible and might actually change something and lead to this kind of what Joe Simons, you were saying, this kind of Exeter model. It would be financed. It's not just the vision and the solution. It's going to cost money. Maybe we need more faculty. Maybe we need to bring in people, of high rank to really spend a sabbatical year. This is going to cost money, and that would be a wonderful way to finance it. And then the Exeter model could be, as Joe Simons, you said, exported to other prep schools and even universities. I don't know if I'm completely off track, but that's one of the few ways I think we can act. Yes.
Yeah, you should listen to, I guess, you haven't yet, the tape of the meeting that some of the members of this group had with Joe Gould some time ago.
No, I didn't hear that. Yeah.
Go listen to that again and take that into consideration in terms of.
I can send you the link, Peter. It's just on our. You can get it out on our YouTube page, on our YouTube channel. It was back in.
Okay, but
January or February. It was.
But in a word, you've considered this, and it's not going to work.
No, it was a very interesting conversation. It ended up. I think you'd find it very interesting. So, I'll share it with all of you, or with it's just on the if you know how to find everybody know how to find
yeah, I have it. I just haven't had time to go back.
Oh yeah, it's just
But what is our thinking about reaching out to alumni in 2 ways: a small group of leaders and a large group of donors?
Let David, if you want to have something to say, go ahead.
Yeah, and I like, Peter, what you said, but you're talking about a really tactical campaign that's going to require some real coordination, targeting coordination with Exeter's own fundraising machinery. You mentioned the word time several times. You haven't even had time to look at the Google conversation.
Yeah.
Well, who has the time? And hang on. I think it's a great idea, and I don't want to poo-poo it, and something to be pursued. But all of these things are, I think, require both strategic and tactical thinking and action and work that I don't know who has the time to do that. I think, September is short, and maybe planting the seed and getting 15 minutes in the September leadership program. I think it's a great idea in that. I don't want to cut that off either. I think you might be a little more optimistic and not just shoot for 5 people who would find some interest, but maybe 10. But if that is combined with student action that shows up at that same meeting, demanding it from that same group, maybe you can get to 10 or maybe 11. But again, that's something that's going to require some thoughtful, careful, tactical thinking. Same thing with the money angle. I think money would be an excellent lever to try to bring into this. That's going to require some organized action, and I believe in the action, but I'm not sure that we have the time or the capacity to do that.
Right.
So maybe we need to step back and say, what can we do, and what's our plan of action? Because Joe, I totally agree with you, and we've discussed this before. I believe in taking action, but it needs to be thoughtful, tactical, and focused. And I'm not sure we have the wherewithal to do that.
Yeah, just for your record, Peter, the conversation with Joe Gould was held the 4th of February. So it was, I think it was the 10th, the Zoom session on our channel.
So our channel is, I'm sorry, Conrad, how do you get to our channel on YouTube?
Well, anytime I've sent you a link, the channel is, you can just click on the channel, you can subscribe to the channel, it's right there. I forget what it's called.
Okay.
It's just, if you have any link to any one of the recordings that I've shared with you, you see on YouTube, everything belongs to, it belongs to a channel. So it's called, I think it's called PEA Climate Action Leadership or something like that. That's what I named it. But anyway, every recording is there in sequence.
I agree with David about the fact that we don't have the bandwidth, and I wonder if one potential source, I don't know if it would work for seniors who are possibly going to take a year off. But I would imagine the vast majority of seniors at Exeter will go directly to being a freshman at some college or university. But it may be that there are some alumni who have already graduated from college or thinking of they've done a couple of years, but things aren't right. If there was any way to reach out and find, and Conrad, I don't know how many others here, but you would remember Sophie Robinson.
Oh yeah.
And of course she's not available, but at the time she was on fire.
Right.
And if we could get 1 or 2 students that were on fire on this topic, and I would think that we ought to be able to do that. I don't know, back then, years ago, there was even some money raised, not much, but enough to pay some of these students. I think it was Justin Landome was one, and can't remember who else, just to do some work, some basic work that David, you're saying, to run a campaign. I certainly would contribute to that. And I think there would be other alumni who would contribute to, especially if it was an Exeter alum who was, say, graduating from Stanford in environmental something, and said, yeah, I would love to work with you guys for 6 months or something, and, figure out some way to make that happen. So that would be my suggestion to follow up on how we could leverage this action item that I think we're talking about as being worth doing.
Mm-hmm. I will
Because I don't
point out,
see
we,
anybody raising their hands and saying, well, I'll do it.
I just want to point out that it's now 8:30, so we've been going for an hour and a half. I'd be glad to go for as long as people want to go, but I don't want anyone to, feel, I don't know what, I'll just point that out.
Well, I've got some work I've got to do for something tomorrow morning, so I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, my feeling is it's similar to Nat's in that I think we should schedule another meeting. I think there's still more stuff to be chatted. And
Right.
if it's possible, we could do it within the next week or two, that would be even better. I would love to see us resolve some things.
Okay, let me just say, I meant to say long ago, I am scheduled for my next treatment at Dana-Farber next Tuesday. So I was going for a while, I was going every week. Now I'm going once and then for one week out of a month. So my next one is this coming Tuesday. So I will not be in shape to have a meeting on Tuesday night, but I may be on Wednesday or Thursday, maybe later in the week. Wednesday or Thursday next week might be fun. So if that would, and I think what, we've, a couple of times I tried to poll the group and then, get a sense of ahead of time of who could come on when, but I think it's best to just choose a time and schedule a meeting and see who shows up.
Well,
Well,
Thursday,
Thursday, I was going to say the same thing, is Thursday night is obviously good for the people who are here.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I don't think anybody who couldn't be here was here was because he had some regular thing on Thursday night. There were sort of special things this night. So,
but what I would suggest, first of all, is to wish you a successful treatment, Conrad.
well, I
And
think
then secondly, to channel suggestions for the agenda, what we want to talk about in 2 weeks, to Conrad as the leader. And then you will come up, you put those together, and we'll have an organized discussion. I think that's very important.
Good.
Sometimes I feel our discussions are, just going off on all sorts of tangents, which are all relative. But it's very hard to come to a conclusion if there isn't an announcement of what we want to achieve.
Well, I would ask you all to look at the agenda of sorts, the sort of 3 items that I said I wanted to cover in this this meeting, and we didn't really, we sort of didn't necessarily conclude any of them, but we spent a lot of time on the first one, and then the second thing I wanted to talk about was the possibility of growing this movement a little bit, and I think we need to really discuss how we would do that and how to engage more Exeter student, more alums, and I think we need to have a plan for that. So that would be, that would be an item that we should discuss, and that's what I wanted to discuss. So
we've touched on it quite a bit, actually, that issue. But yes,
we talked about it. Well, we didn't come to any resolution. I mean, we didn't. I think we'd have to really carefully. I mean, what David was talking about, we have to think about it and plan for what we want and how we want to get there. And we haven't done that yet.
Let's not, in all of this good thinking that's going on now, lose sight of the fact that we've got a bunch of Exeter students that we are committed to helping. And let's not just forget about them. That's all.
Good.
Well, I was going to say, I think my guess, we can look at the calendar. I think that most of them are going to be around, not beyond the end of this month. So if we want to, maybe I should write to them tonight and say, can we meet with you one more time?
Right.
See what because they're going to be busy at the end of the year. It's been hard to get them to, but I will start that process and see what I get.
Good.
Okay.
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 Thank you, Conrad. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you in a week or two.
Okay.
Right.
The week.
All right.
And good luck in your
I'll
treatment, Conrad.
try for next week. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, great.